What's up, guys? Today we are going to discuss our fundamentals of computers paper. So, fundamentals of computer, which was our second paper, fundamentals of computers, and it had total of eight question, and we had to do any six of them. So we had to attempt six questions from eight questions, and all of this was about 30 marks, and our objective was of 20 marks. So it makes a total of 50, which were the marks of our whole paper. So our first question was discuss types of USB, SCSI, SCSI, and MIDI ports and its usage. So types of USB, SCSI, and MIDI port. So we are going to discuss every question one by one, and when we are going to be finished with the first question, we are going to jump over to our second question. So our first question said was that we needed to discuss these three ports. So what is a USB port? USB port is any port which lets you connect any peripheral device that has a USB port itself, means that has a cable that can be connected to a USB port. So for example, you have a keyboard, you have a flash drive, which has a USB port. You have mouse, and you have many other computer peripherals which can be connected to a USB port. So what are its uses? It lets you connect all of these devices to it, and there are many types of USB ports. There is a mini USB port, which is used to connect your mobile chargers or any cables to transfer data or something. Then you have normal USB port, through which your keyboard, mouse, and flash drive are connected to the computer. So these are the peripheral devices. And then you have another USB port, that is the parallel USB port. So what is parallel USB port? It lets you connect different devices such as external hard disks. You have printers. You have many other devices which can be connected to the computer using the parallel USB port. Then our second our second port was SCSI, or you can just call it SCSI port. So what this port is, it has a series of cables, and what this port lets you, it lets you to connect to it different hard disks, different printers, different scanners. So there are some peripheral devices which cannot be connected to a USB port. So SCSI or SCSI port is used to connect these devices to the computer, and it does not have any types. Instead, what we have different kinds of other ports which are used to connect devices. For example, we have eSATA port, external SATA, we have just SATA port. So we have many other ports, but we are not going to go that deep into this topic. Instead, what we are going to do is jump over to our third port, which is MIDI port. I forgot what was the abbreviation, but I think it is musical instrumental something. So what this port does, it lets you connect to it the musical devices or the musical instruments. For example, you have a piano, you have guitar. So what this port is, it lets you connect to it these musical instrumental devices. And why do you want to connect these devices? Is because you want to record something, or you want to record the sound, or you want to store a sound or a track into the device itself. And for example, you have two ports. So you have two MIDI ports. One is audio in ports, one is an audio in port, and one is in audio output. So one is used to transfer in the audio from the device to the computer, and one is used to take in the sound from the computer itself. So these were the three ports, and we were supposed to discuss types of each ports, and then we had to discuss its usage. So its usage is self-explanatory, that it is used to connect different kinds of devices to the computer. Now let's come to our second question, that was volatile and non-volatile memory. So our first, so we had to uh, discuss the types of volatile and non-volatile memory in computers and its uses. So question number 2 is volatile and non-volatile memory. Volatile memory and non-volatile memory. So the word volatile is self-explanatory, that volatile means anything that is temporary and that is not permanent. So the same case applies here, that any type of memory that is not permanent, that is temporary, or that is available for some time, or the memory which is only available as long as your computer is on. As soon as you shut it off, the memory is lost. So that memory is called your volatile memory. The example of volatile memory is your RAM, which is said to be a random access memory. Random access memory. The word random access means that it's randomly accessed, and as soon as the computer is turned off, all of the memory in the RAM is lost. And then you have cache, which is connected to the RAM, and there are different types of cache. You have L1, L2, and the cache or cache is used to speed up the processing of the computer by storing the information which you use oftenly, or which you use more, the information or the files or the information which you use quite oftenly. So that is stored into your cache, and whenever the computer needs information, it doesn't have to go to the RAM, or it does not have to go to the hard disk. It can just fetch the information from right here. So it doesn't have to waste any sort of time in getting the information. So that is what cache does. It saves you time, and it also speeds up the processing power of the computer. Then you have non-volatile memory. Non-volatile means anything that is temporary. So even when you shut off the computer, even when you turn the computer off, the memory is still present in the hard disk of the computer for the future use. So non-volatile memory includes your hard disk, secondary storage, or secondary storage devices, secondary storage, and and ROM. ROM means read-only memory, and read-only means that you can only read from it. You cannot write anything on this memory. So basically, what ROM stores is your BIOS. It means when you turn the computer on, it loads the BIOS into the memory, and that is how your computer functions properly. So and because BIOS is needed every time you turn on the computer, so it shouldn't happen that when you turn off the computer, the memory in the ROM is lost, because then you won't be able to turn on the computer again. So that is why ROM is a non-volatile memory, means it stores everything which you do, and then it does not go away. What happens, it gets stored in ROM, and it is available for future use as well. Same is the case with hard disks. You have secondary storage, and same is the case with all of these memories, where the information remains forever, or as long as you wish. So coming towards our third question, that was biometric and MICR, RFID and barcode readers. So our biometric A system is any system which functions or which identifies a user by any physical trait or by any behavioral trait. For example, the gesture of hands, or for example fingerprint, for example voice, for example the structure of the retina, or for example the eye. So any physical trait involved in the identification of a person is known as biometrically is known as biometric identification, and any system that does that is known as biometric system. You have different types of biometric system, and you have these systems everywhere, and its main application is for security and identification. Security and identification. The second one is MICR. MICR stands for magnetic. I'm not going to write that whole thing. Magnetic identification, character. No, sorry, magnetic ink character identification. So mostly this is used in the bank checks. So there is magnetic ink on top of the check, and whenever you go to take out the money, or to deposit a cash or something, so all of your information is stored onto the check using the magnetic ink. And MICR, magnetic ink character recognition, what it does, it recognizes every character through printed through the magnetic ink, and that is how the banks and the checks and everything works. Then you have RFID. RFID means radio frequency identification. So they have the devices having RFID, or radio frequency devices, have an antenna with them, and it stores every information about the product, or even the human, or some pets even have them installed inside their bodies, and it stores every bit of information about them. And you have RFID readers. Which reads, or whenever the device passes by, it catches the frequency of that device, and it displays every bit of information stored in that device. So that is used for identification, and it's really easy because you don't have to do anything. The reader is going to just read the information and display it on an output device. So identify the objects, and also for security, and also to for example, a pet or an animal is lost. So whenever it would pass by a reader, it will collect every information, and that is how you're going to identify whether that pet was domestic, or that was just randomly walking on the street. Then you have barcode readers. Barcode readers are mostly present in the grocery stores for the identification purposes. So you have two kinds of barcodes. You have 2D barcode and you have 1D. So in one-dimensional barcode, you have a series of different sizes and different lengths of lines drawn in a series, and that is how you identify an object. And in a two-dimensional barcode, you have a pattern of squares or rectangles drawn in a specific way or a specific order that identifies an object. So today mostly these barcodes are in two-dimensional space. All right. I, for these three questions, I have took a lot of time, so now I've got to hurry a little bit. So we have what are interactive whiteboards and smart boards, braille printers. So interactive whiteboards are boards which are smart boards. So smart boards or interactive whiteboards will be the same terms used for the same thing. So smart whiteboards. So what are these boards? These boards are electric, and these boards have the capability of outputting any data. So you connect the specific board with the computer, and it displays every bit of information on the computer on the board itself. And what you can do is you can write on it. You can write on it with a stylus or with your finger, because some boards are also touch screen. And what you can do is, then after editing the information, you can also store the information on the computer or on the board itself. And also the student, it's a very innovative way for learning, because students might have a slate tablet, and they can interact from that tablet to with the smart board. And that way the teacher can just teach anything on the whiteboard, and you will have it stored on the slate, or whatever the students write on the slate will be stored on the smart board itself. It's a very innovative way of learning, and we've everybody should facilitate this type of learning in high schools or colleges or universities. Then you have Braille printers. So what are these printers? Braille printers are used to print on any sheet of paper, and these printers are used by the people who are blind, who cannot see. So what this printer does, it creates certain patterns, certain curves or indentations, and whenever you slide your finger on top of it, so you will feel the curves and that indentation. And when you will feel that, you will recognize every character based on the curves. So blind people are especially trained to identify what's being printed from the Braille printers. And they're really innovative way for the disabled people to learn as well. The next question is about 9 characteristics of hard disk. I didn't attempt this question in the paper because I was scared that I might forget. Any of the characteristic, and I also had no time left. I had like 5 minutes for my last question, and this was the question which was left. So instead, what I did another one. So 9 characteristic would be your access time. It would be your revolutions per minute, or RPM. It will be your platers, sectors, tracks, capacity. It will be your cylinders, and many of these characteristics. So all of these characteristic tend to be of the characteristic of the your hard disk. So I'm not going to explain that much. I have already made a video on that. You guys can check that out as well. You have and in the next question, you have to differentiate between enterprise storage and cloud storage. So the only difference is, in enterprise storage and cloud. In enterprise storage, you know where the content is being stored, but in cloud storage, you don't know where the content is, because the word clouds represents any place that is unknown. So you have enterprise storage and you have cloud storage. So um, uh, basically how they work is the same in enterprise storage, and there's a mainframe, or there's a single or or multiple storage devices which stores the content of every employee in the company. And in cloud storage, there are thousands and millions of people whose content is being stored on the computer. Their function is the same, but the only difference is, in cloud storage you know where the content is being stored, in enterprise storage you don't. Then you have 4 widely used internet filters. So you have phishing filters. I don't even know, I forgot what these filters are. So you had phishing filter, you have ad blocker, and same way you have many other filters which are used on the internet to for security, for privacy, for the enhancement of the use of the web. Then the last question was differentiate between multitasking and multiprocessing operating system. So multitasking is when your computer or your processor is is actually managing two programs at the same time, two or three or four programs at the same time. And what multiprocessing is when you have two processors or three processors working on the same thing on the same time, or any multiple things on multiple times. Then you have the operating system. So you have many operating, you have servers, you have embedded, you have embedded, and you have I forgot the name of the third one. You have servers, embedded, and so in the servers you have Solaris, you have NetWare, and embedded you have iOS, Android, and that kind of stuff. And the other one I forgot the name. You have Windows, you have Mac, and you have Linux or Unix. Alright guys, I'm running out of time, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Thank you very much.